What is agnosticism? Etymologically speaking, the term agnosticism comes from the Greek word agnostos, which means unknowable. Strictly speaking, however, agnosticism is the view that humans cannot know of the existence of anything beyond the phenomena of their experience. In other words, agnosticism is a religious and philosophical doctrine which holds the belief that the existence of God, the divine, or the supernatural is not known or knowable with any certainty. Put differently, agnosticism is the view that human reason is incapable of providing sufficient rational grounds to justify either the belief that God exists or the belief that God does not exist. It is important to note that the word agnosticism was first publicly coined in 1869 at a meeting of the Metaphysical Society in London by Thomas Henry Huxley, a British biologist and champion of the Darwinian theory of evolution. He coined it as a suitable label for his own position. Huxley writes, "It came into my head as suggestively antithetical to the Gnostic of church history, who professed to know so much about the very things of which I was ignorant." According to scholars, agnosticism can be philosophical and as a doctrine for both believers and atheists. On the one hand, agnosticism, philosophically speaking, can be described as being based upon two separate principles. The first principle is epistemological, in that it relies upon empirical and logical means for acquiring knowledge about the world. The second principle is moral, in that it insists that we have an ethical duty not to assert claims for ideas which we cannot adequately support either through evidence or logic. So, if a person cannot claim to know, or at least know for sure, if any gods exist, then they may properly use the term agnostic to describe themselves. At the same time, this person may likely insist that it would be wrong on some level to claim that gods either definitely do or definitely don't exist. This is the ethical dimension of agnosticism, arising from the idea that a strong atheism, or strong theism, is simply not justified by what we currently know. Although we now have an idea of what such a person knows or thinks she knows, we don't actually know what she believes. As Robert Flint explained in his 1903 book titled Agnosticism, agnosticism is properly a theory about knowledge, not about religion. A theist and a Christian may be an agnostic. An atheist may not be an agnostic. An atheist may deny that there is God, and in this case his atheism is dogmatic and not agnostic. Or he may refuse to acknowledge that there is a God simply on the ground that he perceives no evidence for his existence, and finds the arguments which have been advanced in proof of it invalid. In this case his atheism is critical, not agnostic. The atheist may be, and not infrequently is, an agnostic. It is a simple fact that some people don't think that they know something for sure, but believe anyway, and that some people cannot claim to know and decide that that is reason enough to not bother believing. Thus, agnosticism is not an alternative, third way going between atheism and theism. It is instead a separate issue compatible with both. On the other hand, people who consider themselves either atheist or theist might also be justified in calling themselves agnostics. In fact, it is not at all uncommon, for example, for a theist to be adamant in their belief, but also be adamant in the fact their belief is based on faith, and not on having absolute, incontrovertible knowledge. Moreover, some degree of agnosticism is evident in every theist who considers their God to be unfathomable, or to work in mysterious ways. This all reflects a fundamental lack of knowledge on the part of the believer with regards to the nature of what they claim to believe in. It might not be entirely reasonable to hold a strong belief in the light of such acknowledged ignorance, but that rarely seems to stop anyone. In addition to philosophical agnosticism, and agnosticism for both believers and atheists, we may also talk about the specific types of agnosticism, namely strong agnosticism, mild agnosticism, pragmatic agnosticism, apathetic agnosticism, agnostic theism, agnostic atheism, and ignosticism. Let me briefly discuss each type of agnosticism below. Strong agnosticism. This type of agnosticism is also called hard agnosticism, closed agnosticism, strict agnosticism, absolute agnosticism, or epistemological agnosticism. This is the view that the question of the existence or non-existence of God or gods is unknowable by reason of our natural inability to verify any experience with anything but another subjective experience. Mild agnosticism. This type of agnosticism is also called weak agnosticism, soft agnosticism, open agnosticism, empirical agnosticism, or temporal agnosticism. This type of agnosticism holds the view that the existence or non-existence of God or gods is currently unknown, but is not necessarily unknowable, therefore one will withhold judgment until more evidence becomes available. Pragmatic agnosticism. This is the view that there is no proof of either the existence or non-existence of God or gods. In other words, pragmatic agnosticism is the position that you can't know for sure if any gods exist, and even if they do, they don't seem to care about us enough to justify worrying about them. Apathetic agnosticism. This is the view that there is no proof of either the existence or non-existence of God or gods, but since any god or gods that may exist appear unconcerned for the universe or the welfare of its inhabitants, the question is largely academic anyway. Agnostic theism is also called religious agnosticism. This is the view of those who do not claim to know of the existence of God or gods, but still believe in such an existence. Agnostic atheism. This is the view of those who claim not to know of the existence or non-existence of God or gods, but do not believe in them. Put differently, agnostic atheism is a philosophical position that encompasses both atheism and agnosticism. Agnostic atheists are atheistic because they do not hold a belief in the existence of any deity, and are agnostic because they claim that the existence of a deity is either unknowable in principle or currently unknown in fact. The agnostic atheist may be contrasted with the agnostic theist, who believes that one or more deities exist, but claims that the existence or non-existence of such is unknown or cannot be known. Lastly, Ignosticism is the view that a coherent definition of God must be put forward before the question of the existence or non-existence of God can even be meaningfully discussed. If the chosen definition is not coherent, the agnostic holds the non-cognitivist view that the existence of God is meaningless or empirically untestable. A.J. Ayer, Theodore Drange, and other philosophers see both atheism and agnosticism as incompatible with Ignosticism on the grounds that atheism and agnosticism accept God exists as a meaningful proposition which can be argued for or against.